Now we have Senator Gallacher.
Thank you, Mr Acting Deputy President. It's my pleasure to rise and make a contribution in respect to what I think is an extremely important resolution, and I reject absolutely the partisan nature that's alleged by Senator Fawcett. I mean, Senator Fawcett's giving us a very clinical dissertation of his knowledge of defence the defence area, but the reality is he never went within a bull's roar of the real issue. And the real issue here for a South Australian is that this project, being in excess of $8 billion, the largest defence procurement project ever undertaken in Australia, I believe, in the peak years, an average contribution of $298 million and 1,783 jobs to the South Australian economy. I wouldn't have thought that that was a thing that could be dismissed as party political politicking. 1,500 people out of the national workforce of 2,600 are based in Adelaide. Based in Adelaide. So I would have thought every South Australian senator would have had a real vested interest in addressing what is clearly and is referred to as the valley of doom, the period of loss of continuity, which will potentially result in people being laid off, skills gaps re-emerging after all of the good work that's been done to get a workforce skilled in a project which is really, and I have had the opportunity as has Senator Farrell and others, to go down and have a look at how this whole process works, and it is a very innovative technology. I mean, I think Techport down there, their shiplifting capacity enables them to compete for work from Singapore. So if you can't get your ship refurbished in Singapore, you can slip down to Adelaide, and the lifting facility there is able to do it and able to win work. And that is a spin-off from the investment in this project. Now, what really is concerning is some of the things that are happening around this project. And just today, Mr Acting Deputy President, there was a Australian National Audit Office report tabled in this chamber this afternoon. As a member of the Joint Committee on Public Accounts and Audit, I actually got an embargo copy around about 10 o'clock this morning. And it makes very interesting reading. And one of the challenges that is facing the project, and I think there are under point 5, page 15, there are, point 6 on page 16. And it's this: the Ministers for Defence and Finance announced on the 17th of December 2013 that the government would establish an independent review to address unresolved issues associated with the AWU program, with terms of reference to be finalised in 2014. But what's really interesting, Mr Acting Deputy President, is before the audit report was tabled in this chamber, before members of the Joint Committee on Public Accounts and Audit had received their embargoed copies, it was all over the Financial Review. Audit slams $8 billion warship project. Audit slams $8 billion warship project and goes into some level of detail, which I can actually say the journalist did a good job, because he wrote it last night. I got the report today, and it's pretty near accurate. It's pretty near accurate.
1 hour, yeah.
So, well, Mr Acting Deputy President's probably new ground for me as a very new senator, a couple of years down the track. But I would really like to put Mr Acting Deputy President on the record here today, that the Minister for Defence, the Senator, the Honourable David Johnson, actually given assurance to the Senate that neither he, his Chief of Staff his ministerial staff actually briefed the financial review prior to the President tabling this audit report. I think, seek some guidance, Mr Acting Deputy President, but I think that's an entirely reasonable thing to do. I actually attended a function in the President's Gallery yesterday, and I listened very carefully to what the Honourable Speaker of the House of Representatives had to say. And paraphrasing it, we've eschewed guns, swords and fists, and all we have left to really prosecute democracy in this Parliament is words. Well, let's be fair dinkum then. If there is an Australian National Audit Report embargoed both to the Department and the Ministerial Office, embargoed to members of the Joint Committee, Accounts and Public Audit Committee, then how did it get into the financial review? How did it get quoted chapter and verse in the financial review? And, you know, comments were made by Senator Fawcett that we don't want to get into the grubby political debate. Well, let's be fair dinkum, I suppose I shouldn't use that word again. Let's be serious about that. What is happening here is what has happened before. Prior to the closure of Holden's in our great city, there was a Productivity Commission report sought, and there was leaking to the newspapers. It was alleged that, the Treasurer may have incited Holden's to take a walk, go away, challenged him, take your money and go, we don't need you. But here we have a really critical piece of defence infrastructure which is subject to challenges. There is no doubt about that. But if you look at the complexity of the project, it wouldn't be unforeseen to have had, or unexpected to face challenges. Now, I know that the audit report makes comment about difficulties in a number of areas, too vast for me to list here today. But I wonder at the motivation, if we're going to talk about politicking, I wonder about the motivation of people who have a confidential embargoed report who then leak that to the financial review. Are we being set up, Mr Acting Deputy President, for another fall? Are we being set up for another 1,500 and the ancillary jobs to be carved away? Is Senator Farrell right? Have we lost the acumen and skill that used to be representing South Australia in the Cabinet in the years that Senator Fawcett referred to? There were people who were batting for South Australia. We're now left to Christopher Pyne in Cabinet to bat for South Australia. No Robert Hill, no Nick Minchin. Now, if Senator Fawcett is right, and I, Bailey, am not going to waste my time going back over all the detail of who started what contract and when, and who delivered continuity and who didn't, but if he is right, then we're probably right through Senator Farrell saying there's no one batting for South Australia. Christopher Pyne is not batting for South Australia. Christopher Pyne did not bat for automotive workers or the component workers. And I am absolutely fearful that we are seeing another situation arise, carefully managed by leaking to the press of confidential embargoed audit reports. Is this the start of an inevitable platform to be prepared for thousands of other workers to go and join the ranks of SBC perhaps, Qantas, Toyotas, Holdens and the like? Is this what is being stage managed here? And I don't think that that's a particularly partisan question. I think absolutely that all of those workers who enjoy a useful career in shipbuilding in South Australia may have some genuine concerns because there are organisations that represent them, the organisations that represent the employers themselves are expressing concerns. And they're expressing concerns and seeking some help, seeking some guidance, seeking some continuity. And I think we ought to really set the record straight, Mr Acting Deputy President, and just say and put into the record something that I think is extremely valuable to understand the situation we're in. Successive governments have accepted that the building of the DDGs in Australia would involve a premium over building them overseas. So successive governments have accepted that. The decision to build locally is based on a desire of successive governments to retain shipbuilding jobs and facilities, project management, design skills and experience with sophisticated naval combat systems, so as to enable through-life support of the DDGs in Australia. In other words, the skills we get from making them, we can keep that going and maintaining them. And a continuing naval shipbuilding industry. So that's been successive governments have decided that that is a good objective. As part of the June 2007 second pass submission to the government, the Treasury noted that the premium associated with building the DDGs in Australia upfront was about $1 billion. $1 billion, representing an effective rate of assistance of about 30%. So let's think about that. So successive governments have taken that decision that we will build them here because we want the capability, the skill set, and we will pay a premium for it. That is what the Australian National Audit Office says. And successive governments have carried that out. What we have here today is a leaking of the report. We have allegedly a commission of audit hanging over every operation. A commission of audit hanging over all government spending. We have a situation where successive previous governments have accepted a 30% premium on shipbuilding, and we have a leaking of a damning report, in the words of the journalist, a damning report on AWD. Are we being taken somewhere? Are we being set up for brutal cuts which will effectively reverse the position of successive previous governments? Is that where we're going? And that's my question, and I'd like the Honourable David Johnson to answer it. Now, this government, and you know, it's a relatively new government, September last year, the government led by the Honourable Tony Abbott has played the get out of jail free card incessantly. Don't blame us. We were left with a series of books that, you know, it's just can't be our fault. It's Labor's fault. It's the carbon tax's fault. Surely that would have something to do with shipbuilding. That would have put them out of business, you know. It's the carbon tax's fault. You'll get away with that for only so long, Senator McDonald, and then, you know, the reality will come through. You know, I don't think anybody ever voted for a tax, and that's really where the opposition to the carbon tax came from. It was, it's basically an impost, and no one votes for that. And you won. You did win the election. I got no problems with that, but I don't like what's happening now, where we're closing down opportunities for Australian workers and their families to enjoy decent jobs. And the moment that there is an ounce of difficulty in the economy, whether it be in the airline industry, the automotive industry, and now perhaps in the shipbuilding industry, the immediate response from this government is, it's not our fault. It isn't our fault. It is the state of the books, it's the carbon tax. Well, sooner or later, that excuse and that get out of jail card is going to run out. Because you are the government, you are in charge of making decisions, you have your commission of audit, you can decide to support this industry and continue useful, well-paid, high-skill, high-value jobs which support workers and their families right across Australia, and very importantly in South Australia. You can decide to go that way, or you can decide to go the way which appears to be only too apparent, is an embargoed report. We're all waiting to see it. It's in the financial review. We don't wait for parliament process. We don't need to wait for the parliamentary process. Rather than wait for the document to be tabled here at, after question time by the President, We just need to pick up the financial review because someone, and I hope Senator Johnson is able to give us assurance that it's not his office, has fully briefed and leaked the findings. Now, this is an ongoing sort of factor with this government. You know, debt guarantee with Qantas might be there, but it might not be. The other day, Alan Joyce said carbon tax doesn't worry us, and when you think about it, with 48 million passengers a year, $100 million comes back to about $2.13. I'll be corrected on the maths, about $2.13 a trip. Now, he says he can't recover it off the passengers. I'm not sure that that's correct. I mean, I do remember a levy going on the airline industry under the Howard government of a far higher figure than $2.13.
That was to bail out the last airline that went broke under your...
A far higher levy than $2.13. So I'm not really sure, in the scheme of things, with 48 million passengers a year, where the carbon is a huge issue. But on being admonished by the Honourable Joseph Hockey, the CEO of Qantas decided, oops, carbon tax is a huge issue for us. Now, Borghetti was straight up, at least he's consistent. But anyway, I make my point is, are we being set up in this area? Do we really have to be fearful that 1,500 workers in Adelaide who currently enjoy good jobs, well-paid jobs, high-skilled jobs, are they the next cohort of people who will be sacrificed by this Liberal government? And it may be sacrificed by a decision which would be honourable and upfront if someone would articulate the position, the reasons why, and say, look, this is what we're doing, this is how it goes, and this is our decision as a government. But it's not likely to be that way. It's likely to be the death by 1,000 cuts, which seems to be the way that a lot of decisions are emanating from this government. It may be that, okay, we'll put a bit in the financial review saying it's all gone down the chute, you know, things are not going well. I had a very interesting answer to a question on the joint committee, Public Accounts and Audit Committee today from the CEO of the Defence Materiel Organisation, as I put a very provocative question to him. And I put this in the context that there has been approximately $65 billion worth of expenditure by DMO in their model. And they say to us that they have been 7% under budget. 7% under budget. My immediate question was, what was your contingency? And his answer was, it varies to project, but it averages about 10%, and we are advised that that is a reasonable contingency amount for the type of projects we're doing. So I make that point in the context that this report has identified problems. That is very, very clear. It should be debated in the appropriate places. It should be considered by the appropriate state governments, the appropriate people in the industry, and the appropriate people in defence. And the recommendations of the report are all agreed by Defence. So the work to do is to get to that challenge where a budgeted project can be completed within contingency and under budget. That's the work that we need to do. Or the alternative is this Liberal government will simply say, chop, chop, chop. We will cut funds to this project. There'll be a valley of death. Their skills will exit, move to other sectors, and we cannot resurrect this program. That is the fear, and I'd be very, very happy if anyone in the following contributions could put my mind at ease, and more importantly, put the workers in South Australia, in this industry, in a better frame of mind, because it is not all that positive an outlook at the moment. And another 20 minutes from Senator Fawcett outlining what Labor has done wrong is not going to put anything on the comfort side for those workers who rely on senators for South Australia to represent them.